Hey guys, how's it going? Avishai here with another episode of What Israel Is. And today I want to talk about something I've touched on before, and it is a topic which is very dear and near to me, but possibly more for Jews who live outside of Israel. Specifically, I think, in the United States. And it is the biggest challenge, in my opinion, facing Jews today. And that challenge is a question, really, of whether Jewish identity without religion is possible, and if it is sustainable. That is, whether Jews can be Jews without being practicing Jews. Some of you might remember that I brought a quote by conservative speaker Ben Shapiro, conservative politically, not religiously. He is actually an Orthodox Jew. When asked about why so many Jews are left-wingers, he said they aren't. That is, they are not Jews. He said something to the extent of eating bagels with lox doesn't make one a Jew. Obviously he took it to an extreme, and I kind of agree with the sentiment that just eating bagels with lox doesn't make you a Jew. But certainly I do believe that one can be Jewish without Judaism. It's a very tricky issue, the issue of Judaism, because when one is talking about Jews, one is talking about both a religion, an ethnicity, and it's not even just the one ethnicity, but rather a whole very diverse ethnic group, and then there's also a culture. And the culture has a lot to do with the religion, but not all to do with the religion. So this begs the question, what is Jewish culture besides Judaism? There are some tropes. There's striving for academic excellence. That seems to be ingrained into part of Jewish culture. There's a sense of vocational pragmatism. That is, that when one is taught to seek the types of vocations, of career choices that will earn him money, and you know. So this kind of realism, I'm a complete failure at that point as a Jew, because I, at least at the beginning, took arts and education. So yeah, there's also a sense of political involvement and awareness on all sides of the political spectrum. Jews are, in a sense, overrepresented on all wings of politics in America, right? So you have a lot of right-leaning Jews and a lot of left-wing Jews, and they seem to be relatively highly represented. But not just in that sense of politics, but also in just political activism as well. There's a lot of Jews that seem to be very into political activism, again, on all sides of the political spectrum. And then there's a love of discussions and debate. There's a very a kind of a witty saying about Jews, two Jews, three opinions, or something like that. Like, Jews, stereotypically speaking, love debating and love discussions. And that is ingrained into also the religion. There's a long-standing tradition of disputations between Jews and Christians, but also between, like, debates between different rabbis and different schools of Judaism. And then there's this family tribalism that Jews seem to be, a Jew's life seemed to be centered around the life of the family as a unit. And that's a very big part of that. And more on a bigger resolution, there's a strong community and sense of kinship with fellow Jews. Now, those are some of the things that constitute maybe Jewish culture. Not all, obviously. There's also, the silly stuff like food and etc. and humor. But some of it, while I said that those are the things that don't necessarily have to do with religion, some are tied into it. Certainly strong community has something to do with, having a place to congregate, but we'll touch on that later. So, are all of those things I listed sustainable without the trappings of faith? Not necessarily, but I don't feel that this is necessarily also a bad thing. But before we get into that, there's also the question of what is the big deal anyway? Like, there are people like Woody Allen who are very vocal about being Jewish, and they are certainly not religious, and, Fran Drescher, all of those types. So if they are around, then certainly it is possible to be Jewish in that sense without being beholden to Judaism as a dogma, as a religion. But then, is it possible that people of that type, how possible, how feasible is it that they will actually maintain that over generations? And this is where the Jewish fear of intermarriage plays into. So I'll speak for myself, but I feel like secular Jews don't fear intermarriage because they hate Gentiles, not at all, but because it threatens the continuation of the cultural identity in the ages to come. A secular Jew doesn't fear that his children won't be Jews according to the Orthodox rabbis in the halakha, the body of religious laws. What he is afraid of is rather that his children won't feel Jewish, nor pass along anything Jewish to their children. So that is the fear here. So, how can we preserve this identity and still live a life free of God and free to eat whatever it is that we want and do whatever we want on a Saturday? How can we do that and still be able to maintain this cultural identity throughout the ages? So, as Tuvia the milkman said, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong about the person who actually says it in the play. I'm pretty sure that's the one, but I've never actually saw Fiddler on the Roof. Tradition. The observance of holidays and the telling of Jewish history is an integral part of being able to establish a sense of identity by holding a Passover Seder, that's the Passover dinner, and Rosh Hashanah being the Hebrew New Year. By doing these things, all of the holidays, there is a sense of being connected to something, not really mystical, but there is a feeling of being of belonging. I'll say it this way. It feels good to know that what you're doing right now is a type of a ceremony that was handed down to you, and that what you were doing was done by your ancestors. And so long as it is benign, and that you keep God maybe as a word there, but you don't really set a chair for God around the table. I don't think it's a bad thing. My house, we had all of the major holidays. We would hold those, and it's not like my parents would force me not to eat bread around Passover. Not at all. But there were matzahs around the house, and it just feels good. I don't know how else to put it, really. And again, God doesn't really figure into this, so that's a bonus here. Then there's also the another way of sustaining it is communal life, not seclusion from society at large, like the way or some Orthodox communities do, but rather a strong, some kind of center for the community to gather around. For the time being, the shul, or also known as the synagogue, is the best option. If you think about it not as a place of prayer, but as a place of congregation and cultural learning, then it serves the purpose well. Reform temples or conservative synagogues allow this kind of environment of, learning with people with whom you share something, and just gathering with people with whom you share something and talking and gossiping. So these kind of synagogues allow this kind of environment without imposing dogma on visitors. So for example, women and men in conservative and reform synagogues sit together, whereas in Orthodox synagogues, women are put into this, they're behind a barrier, like a physical wall, and there's like holes so they can see what's going on inside and hear, but they cannot be seen, or they can be heard but they cannot be seen. So in that sense, the more modern schools of Judaism are more accommodating for a secular or even atheist person. But all of this begs the question to begin with of whether it is worth preserving Jewish culture, even at the expense of playing along with some supposedly religious observances. I think it is, and for several different reasons. For one, it is because I think that Jewish culture produces people that society benefits from. People who strive for excellence, people with a strong moral backbone, and it all goes back to these things that I said at the beginning of the podcast about what it means to be culturally Jewish. And also because if secular Jews don't claim Judaism, then it leaves the identity to be defined and claimed by the religious, and even more so by the Orthodox. So yeah, I think this is a debate that is worth having, and maybe, I don't know, maybe there is a way to be a Jew without the tradition. I don't know. It's a thing that I've thought about a lot, but it seems a lot to process, and maybe a really hard chestnut of whether it is at all possible to kind of create a new Jewish identity that is not reliant on anything that has to do with God, even in a cursory manner. If you have any thoughts about it, I'd be more than happy to hear what you think, and maybe we can start a discussion going. But I think this is also a question. I know this has been specifically about Judaism. This is a question that is worth asking about any religion. Like, not religion, I'm sorry, about any culture, of whether it is worth preserving the culture. And I think you'll find in a lot of cases that yes, but there's a balance that needs to be kept between preserving the culture and letting it become fossilized. And that's what you get when you let the exclusionaries lead the identity, the cultural identity, is that it becomes fossilized. Culture, I feel, is a positive thing and one that should be maintained, but it is also a living, dynamic thing that needs to change with the times, and yes, can earn a lot from being open to cultural influences from outside. So, with that in mind, I'll sign off now, and I'll see you guys next week. Until then, have an awesome weekend.